Good morning, Will, and welcome to the Low Carb Paleo Show.
Oh, good morning to you, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely, it's our pleasure. Good morning, Mark. How's everything in Spain?
It's wonderful, thank you. Can't complain at all. And the sun is shining, so that's even better.
So no rain in Spain?
Not on the plane, no.
No, not on the plane, okay.
On the coach or the boat, but not on the plane.
Okay, all right. All right, so Will, our common friend, Nora, I always have a hard time pronouncing, Godas. I hope she won't slap me around next time I see her.
Hopefully not.
I went to visit her last summer in Portland. It was a nice visit. She told us about you, and here you are, and you know, of course, your wonderful products. Thank you for coming on our show.
You're welcome.
And you are a board-certified Doctor of Chiropractic in Wisconsin and California. You also own Walkabout Health Products, which is mostly about emu oil. Now, let's talk about your background. Can you give us a little rundown of what has been your background until now?
Sure. I am born and raised in central Wisconsin, grew up on a dairy farm. When I was a kid, at a young age, we sold our cows, and I hung out there for a while, but when I was 12, I moved to another farm, and I was a herdsman, so I milked other people's cows. But I stayed on that farm, and I worked there for about 6 or 7 years till I went on to college. I went to University of Wisconsin in La Crosse, did my pre-chiropractic, pre-medicine, basically, education there, and then I matriculated to St. Louis, to Logan University, and it was called Logan Chiropractic College. Now it's actually a university where they have multiple degrees that they offer. And my son is currently a trimester 3. There's 10 semesters, a 5-year program. He's there in his second year, basically, of 5, and following in the tradition of being a chiropractor. I always wanted to be a chiropractor. The question was, did I have what it took and that kind of stuff? And I really wanted to farm when I was 18, but I chose college, and it worked out for me, I guess you could say.
How did you go from being a farmer to wanting to be a chiropractor? What prompted that?
I had a motor vehicle accident when I was 12, where I ran into a country road bridge, and I broke the windshield with my head at that time, and I had neck problems, and I actually started to see a chiropractor when I was 16 for strep throat and tonsillitis and torticollis, basically. And when I got results, I knew right away that that's something that I was interested in doing, because it was drugless, and it was holistic, and it was different than antibiotics, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And I was really excited. I was really excited about a natural cure.
Very well, very well. So how did you become interested in emu oil?
When I moved from California to Wisconsin, I started another business, and I kind of took I didn't stop seeing patients necessarily, but I took some time off from maintaining my license, and then I reactivated it. And I was working in a friend of mine's chiropractic office, and I met a girl from Australia, and she talked about emu oil a lot. I brought the idea home to my wife. I didn't think about it much, spend much time on it, but Liz really dug in, and she found 2 guys in Australia that had, at that time, a couple farms, and she really liked what they had. We didn't know what it was until we got it here and started implementing it in our lives, basically, and then I reactivated my license and started to use it on people, and in a very short period of time, I knew that it was something that I had to go further with, because it got just amazing results for just about anything and everything that people had, and I wanted to figure it out, and we're still in the process of figuring out, and they've been in business for 36 years. We've been doing it for about 11 now. Mm-hmm. So it is still in my, they didn't know that it had vitamin K2, MK4 in it when we started with them, and we, through Sally Fallon and Weston A. Price, we figured out some of that, and that was big news. And it's just one of the many ingredients, but it's one of the ones that activates proteins that do a lot of stuff in the brain and does a lot of stuff in the body, moving calcium around and making bones denser and taking care of dental problems and helping the heart by taking calcium out of the heart. And so when this all started to happen, I couldn't believe some of the stuff that was happening with my patients' lab work. with their bodies, basically. And then I started to go off the reservation, and I started taking high school kids and putting their foots in Ziploc bags and filling it with emu oil for like an ankle sprain or a stress fracture. And instead of them sitting out 6 to 8 weeks, it took 2 weeks, basically. And kids that got an ankle sprain on Thursday night played basketball Friday night. And I started doing stuff like that. And I've done all kinds of crazy stuff with it, but I really wanted to, we hired a researcher, and we've got the research now, and we kind of have a much better grasp of what we're doing and what we're about, and how the emu oil actually does some of the things that it does.
Right. So can you tell us what makes emu oil special and different than other oils?
Well, there's a pretty big emu oil business in America, the American Emu Oil Association and stuff. And we, Liz and I have had a couple of their, two of the large ones here. We've had it tested for vitamin K2, MK4, which is what occurs in grass-fed ruminants primarily. It can be in the cheese. I've got a list here someplace. Actually, I don't have to see it in front of me, but of all the different foods that it is in, goose liver and chicken and eggs. But when we tested their emu oil, and we found out it didn't have vitamin K2, MK4, we were immediately, we're a little bit shocked. But it's a certain genotype of bird that our oil comes from. They're fed with their traditional diet, and they're being fed what they're supposed to eat, basically, and then how the fat is rendered. When you molecularly distill a fat or an oil, refine it, if you will, when you refine it, heat will destroy some of the good long chain and short chain, probably more the short chain than the long, but it'll destroy those things, and it'll destroy the chemical makeup of it, basically. And our guys do a proprietary process when they render the fat. They got together with an Aboriginal elder, and they do as close to that process that they did thousands and thousands of years ago, where they do not destroy the goodness of the oil when it's processed. So between the breeding, the feeding, and the rendering, this oil is different. It comes from 3 or 4 farms in Australia. There used to be 2,200 farms, and there are now about 20 farms in Australia. These 3 went in the direction of genetics, if you will, and trying to make the oil better and make a kind of an organic bird and not feed them stuff that they weren't supposed to eat and that type of thing. And then the way they render the fat is also very important. But their fat, when it comes off of the bird, is better than their neighbor's fat, because they have got the genetics and they've got the feed figured out, basically. And it's kind of like Pottinger's cats. I mean, it's a little bit like, if you start feeding animals bad stuff, it takes 2 or 3 generations, and you don't have much. And the genotype of the bird in the United States is completely different than the genotype of the bird that we're getting our oil from. So there's a lot of moving parts, but that's kind of explained on our website. So we feel pretty comfortable and confident about some of the information that we have. And the guys that produce this oil have spent millions of dollars in studies and haven't released them, because anybody that has an emu oil has an emu is going to say that our fat does this, and not all fats are equal, basically. And our fat is something that these guys have been working at for 36 years. The one guy's in his 60s, the other guy's in his 70s. They've been at it a long time, and I think they've figured it out, actually. And I know that they have, because of the results that we're getting with their product, basically.
So going back to that important vitamin K2, MK4, what is so special about it, and what are the benefits, its benefits?
Well, it's highly anti-inflammatory. In Australia, through the TGA, they have done enough research, the guys that produce it have done enough studies to say that it can prevent cancer. And I'm sorry about that. That was a slip. That it can prevent arthritis, and it can reverse arthritis. And they can also say that it lowers cholesterol. I don't know how the word cancer jumped into my mind there. But with that being said, when people take our product here in the United States, they get tremendous results. Anybody that has arthritis gets tremendous results. And everybody that has high cholesterol, it lowers their cholesterol. It's because it's an energy molecule. It steps kind of and jumps in front of cholesterol, and that's why cholesterol will lower down a little bit. Dr. Cohen, if you know who he is, out in San Francisco, he and I had a discussion, and that's where I kind of started to unravel that and figure that out a little bit, why it was lowering people's cholesterol. But we know that it's highly anti-inflammatory, and it fixes. There's a study, an Australian study, where they do chemotherapy and radiation on rats and destroy their gut. And when they gave them our emo from our farms, it restored the villi and deepened the crypts. That basically means that their guts were kind of like this, basically. They destroyed them. They gave them the emu oil, and then it brought the growth back and brought the fauna and flora, if you will, back to the gut and made it a working gut again. So we've got studies that say that it's effective on the gut, and we've got studies that it's that vitamin K2 MK4 is neuroprotective and helps with remyelination and does fantastic things in the brain. And that's kind of the research that we just completed. We did some research on the vitamin K dependent proteins that it activates, and went. We did it for autism basically, and we did some studies for. We did some research to prove that we could be effective in treating, helping people with MS and that kind of stuff. So, long story short, we are still learning and still discovering things that it does basically. And people have tried to take vitamin K2 MK4 and produce it in a lab, if you will, synthetically, and it doesn't do the same thing that our emu oil does, because it lacks 1,000 things that emu oil has. Emu oil is produced by a 100 to 200 million year old bird. It's been around for, the Aboriginals have been using this for 80 plus million. If you, the Aboriginals are one of the first oldest living cultures according to Smithsonian Institute. So it's been around a very long time, and these guys have kind of brought back a sacred ancestral medicine, if you will. It's kind of known as the world's oldest medicine. And their research and our research has some of it that they haven't released is astounding. Basically, it involves telomeres and DNA and stuff like that. But just the arthritis and the cholesterol thing alone, that they can say that in Australia is really a big step, because it hasn't always been that way. And it was their oil that those studies were done with. And they probably have more time and energy and money invested in emu oil than anybody else in the world, those guys that we are working with.
Right. So I take krill oil from Norway, which is a very pure form of krill oil. Also very original in the sense that they use all the techniques to extract it. Would you say that? Go ahead.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Would you say that emu oil is better, comparable, or I mean, how?
That's a good question.
How would it compare to krill oil? Well,
krill oil has got the DHEA and the DA, and it's processed, it's extracted and processed just like our oil is and stuff. But the difference between krill oil and emu oil is that the male bird sits on the eggs for 54 days and that's where the oil comes from, or the fat that turns into this emu oil. It's on the back of both the male and the female. The male lives on this fat for 54 days, does not eat or drink, doesn't urinate or defecate, doesn't take in any nutrition at all. It lives on this fat for 54 days. So it is a life-sustaining fat, meaning that it has neurotransmitters, that it has enzymes, it has properties that basically provide enough moisture for the bird to sustain a 54-day drought, if you will. It also explains how they have survived for millions of years, because the fat deposit is kind of like a packed lunch with a drink in it, so to speak. So the difference between those two is that this is a complete food, if you will. It's a fat, it's an oil, and a food, basically, and it's life-sustaining, whereas if you went out there in the desert with a bottle of krill oil, that would take you only so far, and it would fall short in all the other categories that you need to basically to stay alive, basically. So it's a whole life-sustaining food put into a capsule, and we have it in two forms. We have it in a liquid form, and we have it in a capsule form. And the longer we're in business, the more we're leaning into going in the liquid oil form, just because it's there is no doubt about what's in it when you do that. Basically, there's the capsule gets taken out of the equation. The gelatin capsule, because it's made out of cowhide, resin. So more and more people are just buying a 4-ounce bottle of oil, which is a little bit more economical and a little bit maybe a little bit more difficult to use, but it eliminates any of the gray area, I guess, because we didn't. These guys have been doing capsules for a very long time, but capsulation is getting more and more complicated. China has a tendency to own all the capsulation places, so we're kind of migrating away so that we don't have to be dependent upon someone else for our product, basically.
How is it? Is it, if I were to order the liquid, is it palatable? Is it, you know, like my mother used to give me fish oil and it was gross.
She was supposed to give you cod liver oil, but anyway, is it palatable? Yes, it is. Some people say nutty, people say buttery. It does not have any, it's a very stable fat. It has a 3 to 5 year shelf life. There's only two things that denigrate it: direct sunshine or exposure to oxygen. So if you had a 4-ounce bottle and sat it on the window in the sun and took the cap off, it would be getting exposed to oxygen and sunlight. That would be one way that it would possibly change, and it actually gets stronger as it denigrates. As it off-gasses the non-essentials, it actually concentrates a little bit. And I know that's a little bit of a sidebar that I always think about, because I grew up on a farm where we used to do maple syrup and cook stuff, and so it's actually cooking if you sit in the sun, and then oxygen's getting to it. But very, very stable, and it has rancidity tests done in Australia before it's capsulated. The rancidity test comes when they ship it to us. It comes with us. We are now taking samples when it gets here of the capsules and having it checked for rancidity. And neither it can't leave Australia if it's rancid, and they can't encapsulate it if it's rancid. They can't produce it and put it into a liter, a 5-liter thing, and send it to us if it's rancid. So, and then we now have a lab here right in the town that we live in, Marshfield Labs, a company out of Australia actually, that does the testing for the rancidity. So if it does age, it gets a little stronger in taste, but in its fresh form, let's say they're harvesting right now, this is February, so they're in their 2nd month of processing the oil. That oil will be to us probably in a month or two, basically, and we sell it within a quarter. Within 3 to 4 months, we're selling our shipments out. So the oil that you're buying is less than 6 months old and has a shelf life of 3 to 5 years. So we're pretty confident that with all the testing that we're doing now, that we're getting through all of the, I would call it the problem areas, or people that have concerns for what they're putting into their bodies, and they should have.
So besides the obvious fact that you would recommend this oil, would you suggest a switch from krill oil to emu oil?
I would. And we have customers of ours that live over there where that stuff comes from, and the government tests that every year. Tests a lot of the fish oil, not necessarily the krill. I know that I'm going to give a little plug to Standard Process. They have a krill oil that when people bring it to me, and I muscle test them, and I've never actually taken it to a lab and tested the krill oil, but it tests very well, meaning that it does not possibly have heavy metals or mercury or arsenic or any other contaminant in it, basically. And a lot of the fish oil in my practice, I would say about 80% of the fish oil that people are taking does not test well from an energy standpoint. There's something in it. And the tests from out of Norway, where most of the fish oil comes from, would tell you that there is a unsafe level of mercury in it, and acid rain and all that stuff that's getting in. It's really hard to get something out of the ocean that is not contaminated. And then if it is contaminated and you do something to get the contaminants out, you have probably taken the goodness out of the oil itself, basically. So krill oil has been one of the few things that in my practice that people have, and that I check them on once in a while, and it tests good. So that's a thumbs up. We have ALA, and we have stuff that converts into DHA and EPA. So I mean, in our oil, it is you would be doing a little bit of a redundancy if you took krill oil in our product, basically. But there's not a problem with that, because if it's compatible with consumption, I don't have a problem with people taking krill oil and our product at the same time.
I was thinking about replacing krill oil with.
Yes. Well, we are encouraging people to do that, because people are having problems with some of the with a lot of the fish oils that are out there. People are having they're developing rashes when they take it, and some of them, I get them to stop taking it and the rash goes away, and they start taking it and the rash comes back. So we know that there's something in there, and it doesn't matter what it is. We know, and then I muscle test my patients and try to give them a clear them for taking stuff like that. But we haven't had anybody have a bad reaction to our product. And these guys, like I said, have been in business for 36 years. I don't believe that they have sent us any stories about a non-compatible. This is as close to the bird as you can get. It's a food. It's not really a supplement, but it says food supplement on it, and that's something that the FDA is requiring us to. If we were to bring it in as a food, it would completely change its category. But it really is a food. It's a whole food supplement.
Right.
And yes, you could easily forego the krill oil. People are taking cod liver oil, and that's again should be a trace amount because they're doing it for vitamin A and vitamin D, which are this is something that used to be vitamin K2. The one thing that I'm talking about currently used to be in all of our food because everything was grass fed and there wasn't any. It started in the 50s and 60s when grain started to come in to consumption and grass and hay fields went away and they became cornfields and soybean fields and making up feed from a chemistry standpoint for animals at the feed mill, if you will, and they were no longer grazing and nothing was free range anymore. Everything was penned up and everything became industrialized. And when that started to happen, not only did cancer start to increase in numbers and severities and stuff like that, but our food, the caloric content of our food went up, but the nutritional value went down.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're working on. When I encounter people, I really try to get them on a paleo or a ketogenic diet, and I try to get them as far away from man-made carbohydrates as I possibly can. And our product fits right in with that strategy because when you try to make a list of good fats, it's not very long. The list of it's grass. It's organic pork and it's organic grass-fed beef and it's mutton or sheep, and that type of thing, and chickens and geese and actually a lot of poultry and things like that are coming back here in Wisconsin and Minnesota. There's a big push to produce more of it, and it's because you're eating what they eat, and if they're free range and they're eating bugs and what they're supposed to eat and seeds and plant matter, it makes a much better chicken than it does in the factory where they're feeding them basically grain, corn, for lack of a better.
Yes.
So yes, and I when people talk to me about krill oil and fish oil and other things, and I'm doing a podcast, I don't really want to, I'm not trying to put anybody down to elevate myself up. I'm trying to educate them and then let them know that a lot of times some of the stuff that they are taking, I'll tell you a story. I went to a chiropractic college in Illinois. I got up in front of a group of students and physicians, and I took one of the students had a bottle of fish oil, and I asked her if she would come up and chew 2 of the capsules in front of the group. And she did, and she retched, and she threw up into a trash can. And I said to her, "Do you believe that is fit for human consumption?" And I'm doing this in front of a large group of people, and they're kind of mortified. And I said to them, "This does not test well. This doesn't come from a clean and pristine environment. I believe it is toxic to human consumption. And there's a thing called the retch test. When she put it in her mouth and started chewing it, she started to retch. That means that her body didn't want to ingest that." And they put those things, and those kids have all kinds of weird rashes and stuff going on. And I took a class full of kids, chiropractic. They were mostly, some were naturopathic students, but I basically said to them, if you can't rub it on your body, put it in your mouth, chew it and swallow it without throwing up, it's probably not something that you should take on a daily basis just because it's encapsulated, gets past the guards, if you will, which is your salivary glands in your mouth, you probably shouldn't be taking it. And they actually came, and there was a trash can full of fish oil bottles when I left there, basically. And I brought some of them back to my office, and I used them to demonstrate to people and test, and muscle test people and that type of thing. So ours is a broad spectrum. It's a whole food. It's a life-sustaining fat, so it's completely in a different category. It comes from, pristine environment. It's TGA certified, which is the highest standards, higher standards than probably the FDA in America. And we're vetted twice. We're vetted when it comes into the country. We're vetted in Australia when it leaves the country. It's encapsulated, so there's not too much that people can do to it or whatever. And then we get large, like 5-gallon containers, 5-liter containers, and get it bottled at a place that is also inspected and has high quality and all that type of stuff. So I ate emu meat when I was in Australia visiting, and it is one of the most delicious, soft, best tasting proteins that I've ever come across. And I guess you would call it an organic emu. tenderloin basically type thing is what I had, and it was fantastic. I know I'm off subject a little bit, but I tried to get my patients to not go to the grocery store. I tried to get them to go to local farms because we have local organic farms all around here. I tried them to get to go to the farmers market, and that's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger all the time. And the organic section in the grocery store is actually starting to change and get bigger too, because they realize that people are out in front of their store buying groceries rather than in their store buying groceries. They have farmers markets in front of the grocery stores on Saturday and Sunday, and I know that it's starting to have an impact. And I hope and pray that that's where we are going with our. I think we're going back. I think we're going back to how food was made 50, 100 years ago, basically. And I think things will change.
People are getting more and more aware thanks to programs like ours and general dissatisfaction from the public of the Western medicine and the Western type of food that I have seen a huge change when I came to this country as a chef. 40 years ago, you could barely get iceberg lettuce and tomatoes you can bounce off the wall. Now you have all these wonderful farmers markets. Restaurants are starting to use local suppliers, which is the only restaurants I go to, by the way. And then before I retired, we used as many local suppliers as we could, according to the season, of course. So there's definitely, we are doing an education job in letting the public know that going back to the quote-unquote old ways is a better way to do it. I mean, you grew up on a farm. I grew up a few years on a farm, and I didn't realize at the time I was lucky to be exposed to that. But a few years later, when I got into nutrition, I realized that this is the way to go. This is the only way. It should be the only way to go.
Yep.
So absolutely. So I'm considering seriously switching from krill oil to your oil.
Well, we'd love to have you.
We'll take care of that. By email. You mentioned earlier that using emu oil on your skin can be beneficial for skin health. Would that be helpful in psoriasis or any kind of skin issue like this?
Yeah, eczema and psoriasis are two of the really big things that we see when we go to conferences and we encounter people. And we've got hundreds of testimonials, and we've got some slides that we've made when I go to conferences and speak that I'm using with people with psoriasis and eczema and stuff like that. We've had people do just topical and get okay results, but most people, we encourage them to take it orally and topically, basically. We just got a baby that was taking, this is a newborn now, between birth and a year old. It's not walking or anything like that yet. We just got a testimonial and got pictures of a baby that had eczema, and it was taking, I think, I'm gonna try to get this right. I think it was taking less than a capsule a day, basically, but it got better in a week or two. So we've got many, and we know that inflammation starts in the gut, and that's why we want people to take it orally and stuff. But we also know that topically it works. And then when I talked to you about sports injuries and the sprained ankles, those kids are, even though I'm soaking their foot overnight in a bag of emu oil, basically a Ziploc bag of emu oil, they are also taking it orally. So we try to get people to do it inside and out, but a lot of people are using it. It's transdermal, so it literally, I believe that topically that it may have different or even more effective effects than it does orally, because it doesn't go through the digestive tract. It goes directly into, let's say, the arthritic joint. So I got into this business when I have a torn rotator, and I was having issues sleeping since I tore it, basically, that would wake me up at night. I put emu oil on, let's say at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and it was the first night I had slept all night in about 9 months. And I got up in the morning and said to my wife, I'm all in on whatever this emu oil has, because there's nothing else that would do that for me. So that's kind of how I got hooked on the emu oil, because I really was a little bit of a skeptic, to be honest. And I'm a skeptic probably because I grew up on a dairy farm, and I lived in Missouri, the show me state, where I want proof, and the proof came to me and rubbing it on my body and getting complete relief from something that allowed me to sleep all night. So the transdermal power of it is very, very, very at this point underutilized because we don't push it a lot. But it is actually, I've got people that have had their stomachs, gastric bypass and stuff, and we do topical on them, and they are getting results with shoulders and knees and ankles and old surgeries basically on hips and stuff like that. So it works both ways actually. So it is a carrier. You could technically put medication with the emu oil and rub it on your body, and it's going to carry that into your body. Right. It has a lot of different properties that are slippery, I guess you could say, and people don't completely understand. But we're comfortable with topical and oral, but most people have such long-standing problems that oral is probably the place to start. Right. But as far as skin goes, it's as close to the human oils, the oil that your body produces. It's as close to that as in composition as it can get, just about. It doesn't have any reactionary things. Every once in a while, like Alain, I look at your face and there's brown spots or whatever. People will call us and say, "I can't. This oil is doing something to my face. I'm getting red. I'm getting red and irritated." They'll call you back a week later and say, "Where I had sun damage is where the redness was, and it took the brown spots off my face." So it actually can regenerate and repair old skin damage, basically. And that happened by accident. We had two nutritionalists up at a Weston A. Price chapter meeting, basically up in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, and we were very early in the business at that time, and we realized if it's going to take brown spots off of these were women in their 30s, or I guess our 30s and 40s, basically, we knew that it had potential to do a lot of skin repair and that type of thing. And we believe the skin repair and the gut repair are kind of the same thing. One's on the outside, one's on the inside, but it's all kind of the same. We look at the human body as parts, but the skin is the largest organ, and if you can put something on it that repairs it and protects it, that's pretty big stuff, basically. Right.
To make sure we're clear, the topical oil is the same oil that
it is. Yeah, it is the exact same oil. We put it in a 2-ounce bottle because you cannot carry a 4-ounce bottle of liquid on an airplane. Yeah. And it was two-prong at that time. We had we were going to go what we called a cosmetic grade oil, and we were going to go an ingestible oil, and we just decided to make them both the same oil, basically. And that's one thing that we felt strongly about, because you could literally take that bottle that says for topical use and put it in a teaspoon and consume it. We don't necessarily recommend that, because that's why we have a 4-ounce bottle. But a lot of people will get a 2-ounce bottle and a 4-ounce bottle, and they will transfer from their 4-ounce bottle into their 2-ounce bottle, because you can carry it anywhere, basically. Right. You can carry it on a plane. You can put it in your pocket. It's small and it's not glass, that type of thing. And the glass bottle, we went with the glass bottle because of the color of it. It's an amber bottle that prevents reaction from being in, yes, from the sun. Yeah, exactly.
From your expert opinion, what is eczema and psoriasis coming from? I mean, it seems to be a mystery to me. Again, I'm not a doctor, so.
Well, I'm not. I don't want to. I'm going to call myself a farm kid that became a chiropractor and keep it as simple as I can. The research is indicating that as the fertility of the soil denigrates, the biological goodness or the activity of the food that grows on it is being decreased, right? The organic beat in year 3 from the same soil isn't the same, but I'm talking now commercial farms that are producing food. So as the soil, if you can actually measure the biome of the soil, as that decreases, so does the nutritional value of the food that comes from it. So does the biome, your gut biome, the bacteria, the number of bacteria, you can actually count them. They are decreasing. Right. And when you don't have that anymore, basically, that you eat, I tell my patients, if you're going to the grocery store and buying groceries, you're likely to get cancer. And they think I'm crazy, but they're buying standard American food produced in a standard American factory with, again, a lot of caloric content, very low nutritional value. And they can argue about the nutritional value, but it's pretty well known that organic food is an organic egg is twice the nutritional, sometimes 3 times the nutritional value of a store-bought egg, a factory farmed egg, basically. So, but to answer your question, I believe it starts in the soil and it ends up in people's bodies that they don't have any good bacteria left. They don't have a biome, basically. They have leaky gut, and they're eating food that is not compatible with human consumption, with pesticides and GMOs and atrazine and chlorine and fluoride, whatever it happens to be. Their liver is being overtaxed, and your skin is an organ of elimination. It's starting to come out the skin. When people take our emu oil, we've had nothing but spectacular and amazing results, because it repairs and restores the villi, fixes their gut basically. And we know that when it does that, it starts to have an effect on the brain, because the gut sends 10,000 signals or 40,000 signals to the brain. The brain sends about 10,000 signals back. Basically, we know that the gut runs the biome. We're only as good as our bacteria, and bacteria comes from really good bacteria-rich soil, basically. And so we try to flip those people. Unfortunately, you can take our product and continue. I've got a guy that I did a heart study on that it took calcium out of his coronary arteries. He never changed his diet. So what I'm telling you is that this is so powerful that it is a little bit of a shortcut. But we've gotten people that have gotten results on their cholesterol and arthritis and never changed their diets. My goal is to change everybody's diet, because I believe that's where the eczema and the psoriasis is coming from. But they also have guts that don't function, and the only way to get their guts to function is increase the quality of the food that they are putting in it, basically. And that food can only be as good as the soil that it comes from. And everything that I've read and learned now is that this world is all about bacteria and all about the biome, and the soil is where it starts. And that's why organic is starting to make an impact. And when that, in my office, I am in partnership right now with an organic farmer. I own a 240-acre farm that has been certified organic. We are partnering together, and our goal is to bring people into the office, sit them down and feed them some organic food, and tell them not only verbally, but put a slide up and show the difference between an organic egg and a store-bought egg, and educate them that they are what they eat, and they're eating whatever that animal ate, basically. We don't want that animal eating antibiotics, and we don't want that animal eating steroids, and we don't want that animal being sprayed. We don't want that animal to be out in the cornfield foraging while the plane is flying over top of it and spraying it. We don't, we're getting away from that model, because every time you do some of that harmful stuff, it lowers the bacteria count of the soil. It decreases the nutritional value of the food, and it's starting to show up in people, and it's been going on for, I would say, 50 to 60 to 70 years in the United States of America, and we are getting horrific malnutritioned, obese people as a result of it, basically.
Yes. Maybe it's a good time to remind people that we're not just, they say you are what you eat, but also that you are what your food is eating. Correct.
And the soil that it comes from, you bet.
Yes.
You bet. And that and it's eating with, they're really getting into measuring the bacteria count and the fertility of soil, and the more organic and the more fertility that soil has. They know now that the plants that come out of it have more fertility, and the more fertility that the person that consumes that, the more fertility that they have. And we have been working with young women that are not fertile with our emu oil and stuff. We just had a lady in her 40s have twins. And she came to us. We met her at a Weston A. Price show and said, I want to try. It was kind of I would call it an anecdotal, but it was actually a study that we have done with her, where she consumed and her partner consumed emu oil, and they got pregnant and had twins, basically, and she did extremely well. And we believe that by repairing her gut and decreasing the inflammation with our product and helping her brain, basically, that we shortcutted her getting fertility, because she was unable to absorb and assimilate some of the stuff that she was trying to do, basically. I muscle tested her, and we went through a lot of her nutritional supplements and stuff. But we have kind of, we know that vitamin K2 and MK4 is extremely important in fertility. It affects the testosterone and the sperm production. I'm looking at my notes now, basically. And deficiencies associated with longer labor and higher number of C-sections. We know that vitamin K2 goes across the placental barrier and gets into the newborn, and we know that the higher the vitamin K2, MK4 in the newborn, the less likely they are to have autism. And we know that vitamin K2, MK4 is a highly It protects the glial cells in the brain. Basically, it inhibits inflammation in the brain. It stops neuronal damage in the brain. That's some of the research that we just did. Basically, that's why I'm looking at my notes. It moderates the survival and function of the glia and the microglia in the brain. So, and that stuff all used to happen in our guts when we were eating fermented foods and we were eating stuff that came from the soil and wasn't grown in a hydroponic environment, but it was grown on fertile, very fertile soil, organic fertile soil without any contaminants on it. Basically, that all happened, and that's kind of all gone away. And we ate a lot of organ meat. You know, talking to Nora and you know her work and stuff.
Right.
We ate organ meat and we ate fat. And I got to tell you, I just ran into a guy yesterday that is retired and in his 60s, and he had some blood work and he had high cholesterol or something like that. You know, and I'm talking like 10 points high. You know, they sent him home and told him not to eat any fat, and they gave him dietary recommendations that would probably make you and I and everybody that's listening to this ill, because he had a little bit high. And he said, "What do you think about high cholesterol?" I said, "Well, as a chiropractor, the higher your cholesterol, the better I like you, because it tells me that your body is producing something, trying to get to homeostasis, basically, you know, trying to balance itself or figure itself out." I said, it is an energy molecule and it does only repair in the body. I said, so the higher it is, the better off you are, your body. And I said, it has absolutely nothing to do with heart disease. They will argue that point with me, but the gig is up. It's been 20 years that they've been trying to lower people's cholesterol, and it's a horrific paradigm that they have created, basically. Yeah. But I said to that guy, and he said to me, well, what should I eat? And I gave him, basically ran down the list of what Nora and everybody else in the ketogenic, Tripping Over the Truth, if you know that book, basically, that the ketogenic diet is the answer to not only reversing but preventing and eliminating cancer in people. So taking a person off of all fat that has high cholesterol is it's bad medicine.
Yeah.
And I hate to be a chiropractor and say that, but it is really just some of the worst advice that they can get. And
it's bad medicine, but it's good business.
Yes. But it's just so hard to sit there at coffee in front of a half a dozen people and go along with what their recommendations are. And I have to say to them, that's some of the worst information you could. I said, that's so dated and it's so behind the times. And I said, and then he said to me, well, she was I don't know if she was a registered dietitian or if she was a vocational nurse. And I said to him, it doesn't matter who the person is. They're so far behind in what's going on out in the real world, basically, that I said, if you follow those recommendations, you will not get well, you will get worse. And you know, and just getting people to eat organic is a struggle, basically. But getting him to eat good fats, I thought was a fabulous idea. And I said to him, if you want your cholesterol to drop, start eating this, and this. And he looked at me and says, they don't want me to eat that stuff. And I said, well, guess what? Maybe there's a reason they don't want you to eat that stuff. I'm not sure what it is. I don't want to be that sinister, but like you said, it's business sometimes.
Right. So going back, and this is going to be my last question, going back to the brain. Now, we know that brain is about 70% fat, right? And so
98% of the fat in the brain is vitamin K2, MK4.
Okay, this is where I was going to, as how does emu oil benefits the brain?
Well, I'm going to look at my thing. It protects against free radical damage. It's really good for insulin resistance. I'm giving a talk in July, I think, at Terry Wall's seminar in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I'm going to talk a lot about blood sugar, because I've had a traumatic brain injury, and I know that if I keep my blood sugar in the 70 to 80 range, I don't have any problems with my brain hardly at all. Once I get into between 90 and 100, I start to have all kinds of things. And that really is just the driver of carbohydrates and high blood sugar are the driver of inflammation. Our emu oil is it creates insulin modulation, and it helps with blood sugar, basically. It's necessary for the formation of sphingomyelin, and sphingomyelin helps with the cognitive processes in the brain. I started earlier talking to you about how it protects the glial cells, and it's highly anti-inflammatory, and it stops neuronal damage, and it modulates the survival and function of the microglia and the glia, basically. emu oil is neuroprotective, and I believe it does it through the gut, and I also believe it pulls calcium out of the brain in the microvessels and some of the vessels, basically. We know that it takes calcium out in any area that's been damaged, bruised, inflamed, traumatized, basically. And I had a traumatic brain injury where I got knocked out, and I probably wouldn't be able to sit here and talk to you today if I hadn't had emu oil in my life. And coincidentally, my traumatic brain injury came 1 year after we started selling emu oil. So I was fortunate to have this. It has brought me around. I had a neurologist that I worked with exclusively who was an instructor at the medical school and at the chiropractic college, and he encouraged me to get $70,000 worth of testing on my brain. And I said, and you know what I said to him? I'm going to eat myself out of this problem, basically. I'm going to eat my way out of this problem. And he thought I was nuts. But I've been doing emu oil and fats and the ketogenic diet, if you will, and I can't deviate from that. I cannot have any. Let's just pick a thing. I can't have a rum and coke anymore, basically, which a lot of people, and that's a blessing and a curse maybe, but my friends that are doing that, I know that they're creating glycation in their brain. They're doing some damage in their brain. The brain is very resilient. The liver is very resilient, but it really comes down to blood sugar. And all of the people that I have in my office, I actually test their blood sugar. And I don't think this should surprise you, but anybody that has a spinal problem or a headache problem or a rash problem, they all have high blood sugar. So where is it coming from? It's coming from what they eat, and I'm trying to get them, steering them I hope to steer them in a paleo direction, and I'd hope to get them even once in a while to consider fasting and doing ketogenic type diet, because I think it's extremely, extremely important.
And then I have a follow-up question, and this might be controversial, but that's what we're all about here. Would you say that emu oil could help Alzheimer and dementia?
Yes, because both of those, I wish you hadn't said that, but this is where I was
going to ask anyway. So.
Oh, okay. Well, all disease starts with inflammation. And when inflammation gets chronic, the body starts to have a cascade effect in the brain and sometimes in the gut, and it's just like it's like melting plastic, so to speak. You know, if you've ever been a kid and thrown plastic and you watch, that's kind of what's happening in the brain. We know now that through activating these vitamin K dependent proteins that can be arrested and that can be reversed and it can be stopped, basically. And we even know that we can remyelinate with vitamin K2, MK4, because there are some studies. So I believe that Alzheimer's and dementia and things like that are occurring at a great rate because of people's blood sugar. And I know that there's a bunch. I know that Perlmutter and a few other people would support my position or whatever. But it is very, very easily with my emu oil and a diet change to back people out of dementia and Alzheimer's, and I have done it. I can't tell you who I've done it in, but these people are distantly related to me through my wife, and they are 93 years old, and Liz and I have secretively experimented with them because we supply them with their emu oil, and it really comes down to blood sugar and inflammation and changing one's diet. But the emu oil, like I said, the guy that I did the heart study on, he reversed his heart disease and he never changed a thing in his diet. And people attacked me from every time I tell them about the study, they attack me. And I said to him, I wanted to see if he changed absolutely nothing and took my oil, that it would clear his coronary arteries. And it did clear two of his arteries completely and another artery. And he completely, well, he was supposed to have triple bypass surgery, and that was I think that was 8 or 9 years ago that he went on emu oil. So when you talk about that, basically the research that we have done in the last year and a half answers your question. We have a bunch of it up on our website now. We have I think 8 of the 10. They're called posters, and they're called handouts at when we go to conferences and stuff. We are hoping to, I've treated, I'll tell you a quick story. I have a financial advisor that had what would be defined in medicine as chronic traumatic encephalology. He played middle school football, high school football, college football. He was a middle linebacker. I gave him 2 bottles of email. He took 6 capsules a day. He came back into my office about 5 weeks later, 6 weeks later, and he walked up to my counter and he said to me, I don't know if you know this, but my mom committed suicide, and I think he said when she was 52. I said, I didn't know that. And he said, I have had headaches since I quit playing college football. I'm 42 years old. I'm married. I have 2 kids. And he says, I've been contemplating suicide every day for the last 2 years. I've been taking your oil for 6 weeks. He said, and he goes, that has completely gone away. And he was crying. He says, I believe, now this is a 6'4", 300-pound guy. He said, I believe that you saved my life. Now, I have done that with PTSD, and I've done that with people. I've helped some people with Parkinson's, and some of those things are deep-seated, and the longer they have it, the harder it is to fix them, obviously, and of course, and diet is placed into it or whatever. This gentleman did not change his diet, though. He just did emu oils. He's just like the coronary artery guy. No diet change, took the emu oil, but he backed himself out of what he was in. And if anybody's contemplating suicide every day for 2 years and they take my product for 6 weeks, that was a long time. This happened a very long time ago, basically. I'm going to say that happened 7 years ago. And he told me that I will not stop taking emu oil because he has run out at times and noticed a difference in how his brain feels and how it works. So I know that it's going up in there and cleaning out those micro vessels. I know that it's pulling stuff. I know it's putting that fire out that everybody has in their brain. And that fire can be there from stress. That can be there from a lack of sleep. It can be there from prostration, which means, mentally and physically exhausted. It can come from heat, being in a hot environment, basically. It can come from being too cold, and your body starts to produce a lot of neurotoxins and chemicals and stuff like that. But his was strictly from playing football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was wondering why smoke was coming out of my ears. Now I know why.
It's because your ass is on fire.
No, back to being serious. The reason I ask is because my mother has Alzheimer, or at least they're not quite sure whether it's Alzheimer or dementia. And I have sent my sister and my brother articles putting the connection between sugar intake,
correct,
and asking them to change her diet. And they both basically scoff at me and they say, we're just going to follow what the doctor says and that's it.
Well, you wouldn't, if I were to encounter your mother as a patient, I would, or actually if you came to me and talked about your mother, I would say to you, it has a lot to do with complex carbohydrates. It may have something to do with gluten. It may have something to do with dairy, and it may have everything to do with sugar. But sugar isn't everything, basically. It could even be food additives and stuff and food coloring. Right. But the long story short is, if you measure her blood sugar, Alain, if you measure her blood sugar, that's where you start. If it's between 100, if it's between 90 and 100, it's a problem. If it's over 100, it's a big problem. And getting it lower than that, she will probably think that you were trying to starve her to death if you don't.
Yeah. Right. Well, she's a known sugar addict.
Okay.
She was behaving like drug addicts or alcohol addicts. She would hide cookies and candies where my sister could not find them, supposedly. Of course, my sister knew that, so she would eventually find them. But nowadays you can order online. Now, the rest of my family lives in France, so that's why it's difficult for me to do anything.
Where do you live?
I live in Austin, Texas.
Oh, okay. Nice place.
I live in Austin, Texas, but the rest of my family is in France.
Right.
And they don't believe in all that nutrition, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so too clear. And so she was definitely a sugar addict. And when I suggested that they cut down on sugar and try to feed her more fat, they just look at me like I was crazy. First of all,
how does that make you feel?
Well,
that's what I do for a living.
Yeah, that's okay. I've known that I'm crazy for a long time. They all think I'm crazy, but they don't understand this whole side of things that I'm doing. But that's besides the point. What's frustrating is I went back last year to visit her, and of course I think she may have recognized me the first the first meeting and for a brief time, and then it went away. And when I saw that what they were feeding her, I was outraged. I mean, cookies and candies and
Jello.
Yeah. And in a retirement home, which is supposed to be a medical retirement home. And that's when I tried to convince my brother and sister, because they have the power to, sort of the power of attorney to decide on things like that. And I just could not convince them. So even if that information doesn't help my mother, I want this to help other people that are listening, that there are ways to help to control that, but it's going to be a fight. It's going to be a fight for those of you that do believe in that against the rest of the family, because it's not accepted in a medical establishment. It's not accepted.
What I believe has made some of the circles that I used to live in smaller, because I don't feel like I'm a preacher, but I do share information and advice with people, and a lot of people don't want to hear it. And at some point they tell me, you're not welcome back if you're going to talk to us about food. And I laugh, and my reply is to them, I probably won't be back.
Right.
And I don't care, because what we're trying to do is the guys that started this company that Liz and I have partnered up with, the first thing he said to me, we are not interested in making a lot of money. We are interested in helping as many people as we possibly can. If you have to give this to people because they can't afford it, we are interested in working with you. And I said to him, there was a month in when I was practicing in Southern California where I gave away more services than I collected. And he said to me, you're my guy. And I said to him, well, okay, great. But I didn't know. I had 3 questions for him. I said, it sounds too good to be true. Can you produce enough of it if I'm successful? And the third thing is, what did I say? Something about the Wizard of Oz or something like that. I said, it sounds like snake oil. And he said to him, his eyes got really big, and he goes, snake oil is actually a little better than emu oil. He goes, but you just can't produce enough of it. That's exactly what he said. And I thought he was, and so they've had to ramp up production, and they are keeping up with us. We are their number one, we are their main purveyor. They didn't want to be in the retail business of emu oil. They didn't even want to be in the wholesale business of emu oil. They wanted somebody to be their retailer, basically. I was fortunate enough to meet him in Chicago and sit down and spend 3 or 4 days with him. I read many, many studies about DNA and telomeres and repairing things and stuff that no one else has seen, basically, the studies that I've seen. And I was, like I said, it sounds too good to be true. And he said, well, you looked at the studies? And I said, yes, I did. Now, I've now done some of my own studies here in the United States. I've got data that confirms that it's actually reversing heart disease in people. I've got hundreds of holistic medicine people in the United States and all over the world that are using it in their practices. I know that it's bringing people failure to thrive in infants. It's brought infants that were about to die back to life. It's brought adults that were getting ready to die with Lyme disease. It's brought them back to life, basically. We know I've got many lab data that shows that it's reversed osteoporosis. I work with the athletes, and that's fun for me because I was a high school athlete and a college athlete, and I love young people, and I love taking kids. I took a couple of kids and reversed them from being physical therapists to being chiropractors, because I said that you're not going to do any nutrition if you're a physical therapist, and they're like, really? And I've got them, and I've turned them around to be interested in nutrition to the point where they're going to be doing similar stuff to what I'm doing, and my son is going down that path, basically. I think that food got us into this problem, and food will get us out, but we can't keep eating the same food, basically.
No, that's true. Mark,
so
your turn.
Yeah, quick one. You've given us a lot of information so far. This has been one of the most interesting chats we've had in a long time. Let's give people the opportunity to find out where you are. Can you give us your website, please, Bob?
www.walkabout.healthproducts.com.
Okay, and all the information that you've been mentioning is all on there.
Yes. Yeah, and we're trying to be careful what we put on our website, but we're trying to add everything that we take to conferences and put it on our website. because conferences, if we do 6 to 12 of them a year, it gets to be a little bit like being in the circus. And you get home and you empty your suitcase out and you do laundry and you pack it back up. And Liz and I are we're not tiring of that. We enjoy the heck out of it. It's extra work on top of work, basically. Yeah. And we're gonna be doing MommyCon next. We're going to Terry Wall's the Terry Wall's protocol in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We've been to Paleo FX in the past. We always go to Weston A. Price. We're going to try hopefully revive Price Pottinger organization. We believe that their information and their data and their some of the, I was there recently out in San Diego and looked at some of the archives. There's stuff in the archives that people need to see and needs to get out there to the general public, I believe. So our little location here in Marshfield is it's a great little spot that we have created, and I'm really pushing to go in the food direction because it complements what I'm doing. You can't interest a person in getting healthy if they aren't interested in changing what they eat. So why would I even, and it's going to sound sinister, why would I even try to tackle that monster? Because that monster, when you talked about your mom and the sugar, it's more addictive than cocaine and heroin. The sugar is. So it lights up her brain in the same area, sometimes greater amount, and then trying to get somebody, if she's hiding it, she's just like a heroin addict, right? I mean, they're hiding it. And so that's a tough one to climb. But if people come in and want to be healthy, I'm taking Nora's work and I'm taking a couple of the ketogenic authors' work, and I'm trying to make health for dummies, basically. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to, and Liz and I, like some of the stuff I said today, I grabbed and paraphrased, and I took a great shortcut. A lot of our posters are bringing things down from lots of chemistry and science to it reduces inflammation in the brain. It actually surrounds the cells with a fat layer that protects them from inflammation. If you were to get hit in the head, if you're taking Emio and you get hit in the head, you may not have all the symptoms of a concussion, because the more vitamin K2, MK4 that is there, the more protection there is for your brain, basically. It's almost a helmet that's on the inside of the brain, basically. And I was saying stuff like this last night, and Liz is like, you got to write that down. You got to record that. And I said to her, well, I'll talk to these guys tomorrow, and some of it might come out and some of it might not. But I literally, when I took Emio one time, when I had a severe headache, it was like somebody took a squeegee and started at the bridge of my nose and went straight up to the top of my head, and I got relief. And I said to her, and it took less than a minute for that to happen when I took the Emio. I knew right then, and I have a disrupted brain. I disrupted my blood-brain barrier when I had my accident. It was that severe. I said to her, wow. I said, I got to tell this story. I mean, there's something going. That's never happened to me before in my life. And I've read a bunch of books about guys that had CTE. Junior Seau, famous middle linebacker for San Diego Chargers. I read his book, and what he went through and what they wrote in that book was very similar to what I went through when I had my traumatic brain injury. It's just that there isn't anything out there, in my opinion, that's going to do what a whole food is going to, this particular whole food is going to do. And Liz and I have purposely slow grown this business so that they can keep up with us with production over in Australia. We have been ridiculed and approached and people have tried to dismantle our simple approach to slow growth and helping people and that type of thing. And they've tried to commercialize us and make us a big industrial entity, and we aren't interested in that. We're helping individual people, one person at a time, primarily through healthcare practitioners, so they can actually tell the story that I kind of told you guys today, basically. And there's a lot of people out there doing it. There's more and more all the time. And Liz and I are with this MommyCon thing going for mom and babies. I believe that birth defects and infertility and, well, that there's less people being created now than there ever has been in the history of the United States, less births and stuff like that. Well, it isn't because people aren't having sex. It's because people are infertile. I'll be quite honest with you. You know what I'm saying? And it's all coming. That story I told you about how much bacteria there are in the soil. That's where it's all coming from. We can't fix that problem today, but we can fix it over the next 5 years. And it'll be a slow transition into letting animals run out on the soil, eat the grass and fertilize it, and then turn it into a crop field, and then move them over onto another piece of ground. We throw so much Liz and I are trying to compost and stuff. We throw so much good stuff away every day. We eat all organic, so why would we throw the byproduct away, the stems and the eggshells, and and I've got a couple trash cans in my backyard that will prove to you that I'm doing that, basically. But if everybody did that, the world would be a different place. But we've gotten into this. We have, like I said, we've eaten ourselves to sickness, and we've got to eat ourselves to health, basically. And there's a lot of drivers. There's a lot of drivers. The food industry is a big driver. The drug cartel, the drug industry is a big driver. Modern medicine, if that's what they choose to, if that's the word they choose to be associated with, isn't that modern anymore. And they are actually probably not doing as good a job as they feel as though they are, basically. And I say that with great comfort, because I have encountered patients for over 30 years that come to me and tell me their stories, and I have a library of stories in my head from where people were given bad information, followed bad advice, took bad drugs, and ended up dead shortly thereafter. And if they had done nothing at all and let their body fix some of the stuff that they had going on, they probably would still be alive today. And it's really hard to say, but it's an education process. It's not and I hate to say this, but people think that emu oil is a pill and you take it and everything's better. We don't want that. We want to change. We want to flip them. We don't want to just amend their soil a little bit. We want to completely get them farming organic, if you will, and that's what we're really trying to do. And the guys in Australia are proud of what we're doing and happy with our work and like what we're doing. So we're sure that we're going to continue to persist, I guess, is where we're at.
You mentioned earlier the muscle test.
Yes.
Some people may not particularly understand what that is and why you do it, for instance.
Well, I'm going to give you the grade school version, basically. Everyone is electrical. Some people are more electrical than others, and there's actually ways to measure how electrical a person is. But when you put something in your mouth or something in your hand that is not fit for human consumption, it will make you less electrical. And if it's really harmful, it'll make you weak, if that makes any sense. Even synthetic, I have a cotton shirt on today, but even synthetic clothing.
Yeah, now I can testify to that because I can't abide the feel of nylon.
No.
And if I'm walking through a clothes shop, for instance, and I like the look of a shirt, I'll touch it, and if it's nylon, I'll do that because I can't stand it on me.
Well, and people, you can take that shirt that you talked about, or that material. I can actually go into a clothing store with you and take any muscle basically on your body, but usually a shoulder muscle. You test you with your arm. You can put that in your left hand, and you can put your strong arm. Let's say you're right-handed, your strong arm out, if you will, and I can muscle test you, and it'll make you as weak as a little girl, basically. And it's because your body. If you ever put batteries in a flashlight, if you put them in the wrong way, the light doesn't go on. You put them in the right way. Now, I can also take a person and stand them behind you and make you more electrical, because when you start stacking batteries up, it actually makes, more batteries you put in a flashlight, the brighter the bulb is, the more electricity it generates, that type of thing. There are people that aren't electrical that I have to have somebody stand behind them to make it. You ever have a dead battery and put cables from a good battery to a dead battery? It's basically that premise. But I was at a seminar recently, and a guy was talking, and I said to him, he was talking about soy milk and how good it was and stuff. And I said to him, do you ever muscle test any of your patients for anything that you recommend that they take? And he said, muscle testing he's like, I'm not even going to talk to you. Now, this is in a room of a couple hundred people. And my attitude is like, look, buddy, you're living in the dark ages because you're relying upon a lab to tell you if somebody is healthy or not. And I can tell you with my bare hands as a chiropractor if they are or not. By tenderness, by inflammation points, by the smell of their breath, by smelling their feet, by pushing on their abdomen, by pumping their liver with my hand, by feeling the hot spots on their body, and really muscle testing really is just it's an electrical event between two electrical things. If you put something that breaks up the electricity so that it doesn't make a circle anymore, it makes them weak. And I've done it with bodybuilders. So, and when I stopped doing the Paleo FX because, I'm a small fit guy, and I was dealing with great big fit guys, and they didn't believe a lot of what I said. But when I proved it to them, some of them were infuriated. But really, it's a learning process that you are electrical, and there are things that are going to make you more electrical and things that are going to make you less electrical. The interesting thing about that encounter is that I took a bottle of Emuel and put it in their hands, and I had them ingest it, and it made them stronger.
Wow.
And it's because it increases the VO2 max, and it increases their oxygen basically in their body basically, but it also it's got so much energy in it. And I know that a lot of people think because it's esoteric and it's strange and all that stuff and foreign. It's been going on. Muscle testing has been going on for over 100 years. So it's not like it's something new. It's just always been put down by anybody that believes in science. Here's a good story. Anybody that believes that science is stronger than nature, they don't believe in muscle testing because they're a scientist. But then there is this nature thing where people have lifted cars. Okay, that's nature. They've gotten in a big. Well, how does that happen? Well, that's the human body. That's a natural occurrence of lighting everything up in your body and being more electrical at one moment, strong enough to lift a car. And it's happened many, many times. Some of it very well documented, basically. Well, that's nature. Now, I'm sure you could hook up electrodes to a human being and shock them and get them to do the same thing. That would be science, basically. But it all does occur. But nature, I believe, is better than science. Yeah. And that's kind of so the muscle testing thing, applied kinesiologists, there's medical doctors all over the world that do applied kinesiology. We still do go occasionally to the International Chiropractic Applied Kinesiologist Chiropractic event in Chicago, and it's out in Virginia. There are hundreds of people that muscle test throughout the world. Basically, it's not like it's a cult in the middle of Ohio or anything like that. It's for people that are getting away from conventional failing medicine and getting into holistic medicine, and that I feel very comfortable saying that because I believe that the answers are inside of us, not outside waiting to jump in. And so our Emuel kind of fits into that paradigm because vitamin K2 used to be in all of our food. And now it's not in any of our food. And I believe that's why some of the things that are happening to the brain are happening because we have gotten away from good fats. And this is one of the most important, vitamin K2 is one of the most important things that you can get. And it only comes, there are some synthetic attempts and stuff, and I've muscle tested all of it, and I've got the research in front of me. Liz wanted me to talk about it today. Vitamin K2 MK4 is the only biologically active form that the body gets, that takes in and uses, basically. The rest of them are made from bacteria, basically, and they are not biologically active. It's beneficial to the gut and the gut only. It doesn't travel. There is no MK7 in the brain, and I'm just scratching the surface of people's. I don't want to get. It's very controversial, but that's why we did the research that we did to prove that this is a fat that travels around and lives in and is stored in the human body, and essential to life, and the less of it we get, the worse life goes, basically. And it's really important in all of the vitamin K dependent proteins, which keep our brain alive and keep our brain from overheating and protect our brain when we get hit in the head. And I believe that, if I took a guy that had CTE and reversed, I believe that if I could give a football team a season's dose of Emuel and they played football, that they would have less concussion disorders, basically, because we know they're going to get concussed. It's just a matter of how protected their brain is. Like I said, they're trying to protect the brain from the outside. This protects it from the inside out. And the science is actually very, very solid and very, very firm about how it does it now. And that's the piece of paper, and it is on that. The paper I'm talking about is on our website. I looked at it yesterday. And it says vitamin K dependent proteins and sphingolipids, and it goes through that over 98% of the vitamin K in the brain is vitamin MK4, MK4, and it's essential. And the lower it gets in the moms, the lower it is in the dads. Boys have more autism than girls, and when they measure their vitamin K2, MK4, it's lower than girls. And they have less fat than girls, yes. And that's why that's why I believe boys are more prevalent to autism, because it affects the brain, and without it, the brain is susceptible to inflammation. They get a blow to the head or they get an immunization. It doesn't really make a difference. It's all inflammation. If they don't have a lot of vitamin K2, MK4, it starts that melting. I said, picture a piece of plastic being thrown into it starts to melt the plastic. Well, vitamin K2, MK4 prevents that from happening, basically. It insulates it, and it lowers the temperature, and it's anti-inflammatory, and it's got all this protective sauce that it creates in the brain to cool it basically and to regulate it. And some of the stuff that's in, I could read this whole sheet, but it's words that are hard to pronounce, and it's on our website now, and we hope that people get there and read it, because handing one at a conference, handing 100 of them out, and having 1 million people out there go to our website and read the effects of vitamin K dependent proteins is what we're driving for basically. And I didn't expect to talk about anything that we talked about today, but you guys asked and I talked, so it was fun to do it, and I'm glad that we got most of your questions asked.
There's a couple more. I mean, staying with the brain, you've already mentioned that emu oil is good with things like Alzheimer's and dementia.
Mm-hmm.
What about strokes and the aftercare with strokes and that type of thing?
It naturally, vitamin K2, MK4, which is in our oil, people send us emails every once in a while asking us how much. There is no real hard data, but about 4 capsules a day is not going to thin the blood enough to cause any problems. But here's what I try to tell people, that I've got people that are taking 6 and 12 capsules a day that have had strokes and stuff and haven't had any problems. It's also been around for 35 years that people have been consuming this and there haven't been any bleeding problems or whatever. But because it's a fat, and it's a fat-soluble vitamin, if you get too much of it, your body excretes it. So it self-regulates. Whereas if you take a blood thinner and put it into your body, that's there, it's locked in, and it's going to do 100% of what it's supposed to do. The body doesn't excrete blood thinner. It's a chemical reaction. It's messing with homeostasis and anatomy and physiology. This is a natural blood thinner, if you will. So we haven't had any problems, but if people have any concern, it says to take 6 capsules a day on the bottle. I tell them to take 4 if you really are concerned about. But I actually have treated some people that have had strokes that were taking aspirin. I got them off of aspirin, and I got them on emu oil, and guess what? I know from all of the science that's out there about that an aspirin a day or a baby aspirin a day is not, there's a lot of bad in that basically, and there's no bad in taking 3 emu capsules a day because it's food.
But not so much from the point of blood thinning, more from the point of help with recovery. It's just more of the side I was looking at. Oh,
stroke, you mean recovering? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, understand that strokes, depending upon where they occur and what part of the brain and stuff, it all has to do with basically blood supply. And we know that when you increase VO2 max and when you start to pull calcium out of arteries, that I've had people at shows that have had strokes, and I've had young people, I've given them email at a show, and they'll come back to me and say, my head feels different. And I said, well, it's a fat soluble vitamin. It may have gotten into your head, relatively quick. But I believe that having treated successfully people that have had a history of strokes that are no longer, and I actually had to get them off of aspirin because I didn't want the double thinning property, and there's also a lot of downsides to taking aspirin basically, especially on a regular basis or whatever. But I believe that from the science the research that we have now about the effects in the brain basically, I'm going to read you right here. It's neuroprotective in stroke, neonatal hypoxia, brain ischemia, spinal cord ischemia, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis-like diseases, and that means that when there's not a blood supply or there's not an oxygen supply, let's say in a newborn or in a stroke victim, it's neuroprotective in stroke. Emu oil is, and that's the protein C that is one of the vitamin C, vitamin K dependent proteins basically. So if you just go to our website and look at some of this thing, and a lot of it's really complex. It explains some of that, and we're not treating stroke. We're treating people that want a alternative that's going to help their brain basically. Should they have, and it's really easier with the arthritis and the cholesterol I talked about in Australia, where they can legally say it, it's really a lot easier to prevent that stuff than it is to treat it. But I am currently treating it successfully, especially cholesterol, especially arthritis, and heart disease is really just the same thing. It's inflammation. The body throws in some wherever the inflammation is. The body throws in damage and starts to build up plaque and starts to build up blockage, if you will, and this pulls that out. And I've got a cardiologist in the Phoenix area that is doing he's a holistic cardiologist. He's doing medical doctor, basically doing fantastic things. I need to talk to him and stuff like that about it, but I know that it's working. I know how it works, and it's a food, and I feel very comfortable and safe that there's no downside basically to taking it for a stroke or for heart disease or bone density or whatever you're talking about. Basically,
I mean,
all
so
the same.
in essence, then,
What's that?
so in essence, then, if you've had a stroke, it would be the ideal thing to take, because when people have one stroke, they're quite likely to have several afterwards.
Yes, and understand that it can remyelinate. Yeah, well, according to what it does, it is, because some of the stuff that's happening to people in strokes and stuff like that is because they don't have vitamin K2, MK4, and without that protection, things that would normally not affect them are affecting them because they don't have the neural protection. I talked about neuroprotective in stroke and hypoxia and ischemia. When they have those events, if they don't have enough vitamin K2, MK4 in their brain, basically, to do the cooling, if you will, or the anti-inflammatory properties, stopping neuronal damage, if that doesn't occur, then bad things start to happen in the brain, basically. And I've treated as a chiropractor several ALS patients over my career and stuff, and I've gotten one of them to take emu oil. I've got a guy now with Parkinson's that claims that chiropractic is better than the emu oil, but it's putting fertilizer on the ground doesn't immediately make the plant grow, basically. And that's really how people have to look at taking emu oil. It's missing in our diet. 90% of the people are deficient in vitamin K2, MK4. That's pretty well documented. It's not in our food supply anymore. This is the highest naturally occurring source that we know of, basically. And it's been around for millions of years, and it's you know what, it's so simple that I think people are pushed off by it, to be quite honest. But the guys in Australia are not pushed off by it. They've been doing it for 36 years and believe in it wholeheartedly, basically. How's that? Good commercial for them.
Mark, if you're finished with your question, do you have...
just got one more, actually. I mean, from an age perspective, does vitamin 2 and K4 die off with age?
Do you mean, do we produce less?
Yes, in essence, yeah.
I believe that we do, and that's probably a degradation or a decrease in the biome, basically, in people's guts. But I'm currently, the two people I mentioned earlier that are related to my wife, I'm currently working with them, and I believe that both of them are doing better now than they were 5 years ago. And they started taking, one of them's been taking emu oil for 10 years, and one of them's been taking it for about 5. I believe they are both doing better at 93 and 93 than they were at 88 and 88, to be quite honest. Well, they both drive. They are on no medications. They both they live in a 2-story home. Their bedroom is upstairs. They can walk. They can get in and out of a car. They can get in and out of chairs. They take care of themselves. They read. They both read voraciously. They go to church every Sunday. They go grocery shopping every Tuesday. They're pretty remarkable people. And I believe that anybody from 88 to 93, if they were doing the same thing at 93 that they were doing at 88, there's got to be an answer to that, because most people deteriorate quite. And to be honest, I looked at them 5 or 10 years ago and thinking they won't see 90, and they're doing the same at 93 as they were at 83, and maybe even 73. Excellent. But they have been taking emu oil, so they're the elderly canaries in the cave, I guess you could say. And it's nice to see. It's fun to enjoy. I believe that it is giving them stuff that they couldn't get nutritionally anywhere else. Your body just becomes less efficient as it starts to break down in age, but they have maintained quite well for the last 10 years, basically. And I believe there's got to be something to that, because their diet isn't as clean as mine. I know that for sure. But they have the attitude that they're 93 and they can eat whatever they want. And I'm okay with that. I'm just not I don't think sticky buns are good for anybody. And cinnamon rolls, I guess you could call it sticky buns.
Yeah.
I think it's a cinnamon roll smothered in white frosting is what a sticky bun is, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah, you could be right there. Alan, back to
so that, yes. Diet has a lot to do with but I believe that this is an anti-aging vitamin. If you look and read anywhere, my argument for my answer to your question is this is known as one of the best anti-aging vitamins that there is, vitamin K2, MK4. So I'm actually seeing it in my day-to-day life with my in-laws. That they seem to not be aging.
Right. Okay. My question.
Yep.
I get the feeling we could go on and on for hours, but I'll try to make this one the last one. Again, I'm not a doctor, and so I don't pretend to know. A friend of mine has arrhythmia. So basically, their heart misfiring, right?
Well, yes.
It's an electric situation, right?
It is.
You could explain it much better than I do. But my question is, she's suffering from it, and her doctor is giving her some kind of medicine to help with that. Would emu oil help her in that case, or improve her situation?
I'm going to go out on a limb just for you. I have dozens of people that I have encountered at conferences that had arrhythmias. I have one of my best friends who lives in Phoenix, Arizona. I gave him emu oil, and he called me about 2 weeks, I'm going to say 2 weeks after he started taking it, and said, I no longer have an irregular heartbeat. And I said, how do you know it? He goes, I went to the doctor, and it takes 7 to 10 days for these proteins to be activated in the body by vitamin K2, MK4. Roughly about 2 weeks after he started taking it, he no longer has an arrhythmia, no longer has an irregular heartbeat. But I've had a dozen people come and tell me that. And here's what I believe is happening. It's an energy. Emu oil is not only an energy molecule, but when it increases VO2 max and it pulls calcium out of the coronary arteries, those little things that create arrhythmia are connected. Nerves are connected to the valves, basically. The valves open and close. When you start to cloud those or crowd those with calcium or plaque, if you will, and you pull that plaque out of there, it is just like a carburetor that was dirty, that wasn't opening and closing like it should. When you clear the plaque off of the connections of the nerves to the valves and to the things that make the heart beat at a regular rate, basically, the arrhythmias go away because the heart is now clean. It was having an irregular beat because the conduction of the signal from the brain to the heart was disrupted basically by junk collecting around the moving parts, if you will, the muscles.
Yeah, no, that's a very good
we have dozens of testimonials about our emu oil changing people's irregular heartbeats and arrhythmias. And we've got documentation actually from people. Some of our practitioners have got documentation on themselves about irregular heartbeats and it going away when they started taking emu oil.
Okay. When I send you the follow-up email, if you have a link to that, I would be interested to show it to her, because I don't like what her doctor is doing to her. So I'm gonna see if I can convince her to switch, or at least not necessarily stop the medication, but take some emu oil and take it.
Age depends upon that. A good indicator of plaque in your heart is your waistline and how much arthritis you have and how much dental disease you have. So all those things kind of are running on the same inflammatory path, basically. Mid-body, the proportion of the mid-body fat that people have is proportional to the amount of plaque that they have in their coronary arteries, oftentimes. Almost an indicator, basically. And occasionally people are thin and have the same exact problems in their heart, but it's not as common as people that have mid-body fat. They're more likely to have cardiac events, basically, than people that don't carry excess weight in the middle portion of their body, around the waistline, I guess you would call it.
No, she's thin and she's very active, so it's not that is not the problem.
That's great, because she sounds like a candidate that would. I tell everybody your starting point is critical, because the higher functioning you are, the healthier you are, the fitter you are, the cleaner your diet is. It's easier to fix people that are that way than people that are 100 pounds, 150 pounds overweight and eating a standard American diet. Those people are hard to fix. So it's kind of like she's got a much better starting point, it sounds like to me, than a lot of people have. So that's a positive, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Before we close, Will, is there anything that you really think that people need to know that we haven't covered so far?
I ended a talk with an interview through Weston A. Price. I've never listened to it, but she asked me a question at the very end, similar to that. She said, "What advice can you give people to be healthier?" And I said, "To eat less and to eat more fat." And when I said it, I wasn't thinking about that. She caught me off, and then I've had people tell me how clever that is. I said, "Well, we all probably, if we're overweight, we probably eat more than we should." And I lost 50 pounds 10 years ago when I read Nora's first book, and I just went paleo, and I ate as much as I could of the stuff that she said I could eat. I mean, I didn't weigh anything, I didn't measure anything, but I literally got away from dairy, I got away from grain, and I got away from sugar almost completely. And the weight fell off of me. And my wife tells me it's because I'm a guy and men lose weight easier. And I said to her, you know, God didn't discriminate and make women different. They still have hearts and lungs and intestines and, you know, she goes, well, we have different basic metabolic rate or whatever. I said, yeah, but if they stick to the diet and skip dessert, which seems to be the weak point for a lot of people, basically, the same thing will happen to them. It might take longer, basically. I'm very active. I walk. In the summertime, I walk 3 to 6 to 10 miles a day. I'm a golfer. I also just enjoy walking. I own a property that's, you know, fairly large, and I can walk all day on it, basically. Sometimes when I go out to the organic farm, a lot of our day is spent walking and working and that type of thing. But I think eat less and eat more fat, and that flies in the face of modern medicine, basically. I subscribe to a 30 to 40-minute walk 3 or 4 times a week. I'm really opposed to over-exercising. I believe that there are things that are medicinal, like green tea, that people could partake in. Instead, they take coffee and destroy their insides and drink a dozen cups a day, and, you know, pour their body full of caffeine and can't understand why, you know, things go haywire or whatever, their blood pressure, you know, that type of thing. I'm pretty simple. I eat eggs and bacon in the morning. I don't probably eat until dinner time, and I have a protein at night and a couple of cruciferous vegetables. I've really cleaned my life up, but I'm eating a lot less and spending a lot less on groceries and eating just good. If I'm eating, it's really nutritious, good stuff. And I hang out with guys that eat Skittles and red licorice and drink beer and have a lot of fun and eat pizza, and I know what they're doing to themselves now, and I was doing it with them, and I think I'm proof that you can reverse, because I went from 210 pounds to 160. I really try to get people to, if they don't have an interest in getting well, then it's hard to help them, and a lot of people don't have what it takes, and most people got to be at the bottom. I oftentimes get guys with severe lower back pain that they come in to crawl into my office, and that's when I talk to them about getting adjusted on a regular basis, because a rusty hinge shouldn't be oiled once a year. It should be oiled once a month, you know. And I talk to them get in their grill and talk to them like that. But I think that I try to support all organic food and organic farmers and that type of thing. And every people say it's too expensive. I tell them the story. The number one reason people go bankrupt is a cancer diagnosis. That throws them into bankruptcy, and guess where cancer comes from? It comes from this not eating organic. Organic's just a layer of protection, or I believe it's the best thing you can do for your health is to know where your food's coming from, and like we said, know what your food is eating, basically. You know, we're eating what they're eating, that type of thing. So there's no real magic, but it comes down to discipline and desire, and you know, waiting for people to get so unhappy about where they're at is when I really try to corner them in my office and get them to change. And that's really the key, I think. We all have our weak moments and get into places that we, you know, have to eat what's being served or whatever. But for the most part, I have celiac disease, and a brain injury. I just read a bunch of information before I talked to you guys today that I should have never graduated high school based upon my celiac disease. I should have never graduated college. I should never graduated chiropractic college. I should have had ADD, and I should be a low-wage earner doing a menial job somewhere just simply because of celiac disease and what effect it has on the brain. And I believe that growing up on a farm and eating out of a garden and eating there's a bunch of research now that males between 9 and 12 and girls between 8 and 11, what they eat during those 3 years sets them up for their entire life, basically. And I was eating very good at that time in my life. So, because I was on a farm and we had pigs and we had chickens and we had ducks and we had geese and we raised our own turkeys and we had a big garden. So that's what I was doing between 9 and 12. And I was fortunate that I was not going to the grocery store, basically, and not going down to the corner to get my eggs. I went down to the corner farm and got people that raised eggs, free range eggs and stuff. So there's a lot of information out there, but people don't have enough willpower to go all day and not eat. And that's where the rubber meets the road. If you don't have discipline and willpower, you can't wish yourself healthy. You have to eat yourself healthy, and that takes a lot of discipline.
Right. Keeping in mind that a lot of the foods, processed food they give us nowadays is highly addictive.
Oh, yeah.
They want you to eat more.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
designed that way.
Absolutely.
They start you on sugar very early on, and then they start, all the MSGs and all the artificial flavors and everything that makes an addict out of you. And that's why people have a hard time getting off of it.
Yep, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, it's educating people about that and having them read labels and how much sugar is in something and what kind of sugar it is. I just had my organic farmer process some beef jerky, and it had, I'm just going to estimate, between 50 and 75 ingredients on the label of all the stuff that they did to that meat, basically. And I said to him, I can't sell this in my office. And he was not shocked. He was a little surprised. I said to him, you can sell it at the farmer's market all day long, probably, because people aren't going to read what's in it. But I said, meat by itself and salt by itself are good things, but the 75 things that they've done to this meat, and it was like high fructose corn syrup and food coloring, and the label was just atrocious. And I just said to him, I can give it to people I don't like. I can even give it to my friends, but I can't sell it or I can't eat it, because of what they have done to turn it into beef jerky, basically. Right. And that 100, 150 years ago, they preserved meat with salt and traveled across the country with it in a wagon, So there are alternatives. It's just that we are not willing to go backwards to go forwards, basically. A lot of people want the shelf life of forever and think it's going to be good for them to consume at some point, and it's not.
Right. They think that preservatives in the food is going to preserve them.
There you go. Yeah, that's their joke. Yeah, you got that right.
Okay.
I'm going to a funeral on Friday. That was his mantra.
Yeah.
I'm preserved because all the stuff I eat has preservatives in it.
Okay. I didn't know it was a joke. I just came up with it.
No, it's a standing joke for a lot of my friends.
Okay.
It sure is.
Well, we could go on and on. Maybe we'll ask you to come back.
Yeah. Well, and when I get a little bit better, you go on our website and look at the new posters that we have up. Some of the information about the brain is very in depth, but it's very. You can take your phone and Google some of the stuff that's said. I had to do it last night, actually, to get a further understanding of how protective the vitamin K2, MK4 is for the brain and how important it is. And we are not moving in the direction of fixing brains. We're moving in the direction of helping people. And I think my email said to you that we are really getting a lot of autoimmune people. And we know that that's gut, and we know that it's affecting their brain, and we know that we can help both of those with our product. And the next step is when you fix a guy with heart disease, you'd like to get him to stop eating baked goods every day, and he can't. And so he lives a dual life. He gets to eat baked goods and take emu oil, basically. And his wife likes to bake, and I'm not gonna get between him and his wife.
No, that's trouble. Thank you again, Will, for being on the Low Carb Paleo Show. And as we say in Texas, à votre santé, y'all.
Okay.
That was the joke.
Yes, I got it.
Yep, thanks, Will. It's been really good.
All right, thanks, guys. Have a good day.
And